the 3-hour Tantric sex myth, and what actually works for real women in real marriages. If sacred sex has ever felt out of reach, this one's for you. Welcome to the Unapologetic with Jannine McKinnon podcast, your go-to place for approachable conversations around sacred sexuality and conscious relationships. I'm your host, Jannine McKinnon, certified trauma-informed sex, love, and relationship coach who's on a mission to support 1 million women and couples to experience deeper connection and more expansive pleasure inside and outside the bedroom. This is the space to go deep, to dive below surface level relationships and mess sex and explore the sacredness that sexuality and conscious relationships have to offer. Because deep connection, spiritual sexuality, full body orgasms, and transmuted sexual energy are available to everyone. And I'm here to serve the collective, to provide the knowledge, wisdom, and tools to access them. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful we're able to connect in this way, and I can't wait to dig into the contents of this episode with you. Without further ado, let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to another Tuesday transmission episode inside the Unapologetic with Jannine McKinnon podcast. Today we are dispelling the myth that you need a 3-hour weekly sex date with your partner to improve your sex life. And I'll give you 3 practical ways to shift your mindset, sensual embodiment, and pleasure capacity in a way that actually works for busy everyday life. Because let's be real, 3 hours a week to get naked with each other just isn't realistic, especially when you're factoring in work, family life, and prioritizing your health and spirituality. On top of that, adding in 3 hours to get naked with your partner just isn't something that's practical. And so we are going to give you a few different options to weave in that will fit in with everyday life and will have a big impact in how much pleasure you are able to experience with your partner. This episode is inspired from a clip that I saw on Instagram of Kim Anami on the Human Garage podcast. And so in that clip, it basically talked about how a lot of women are experiencing like 3-minute sex and how unfulfilling that is and how it causes so many issues, which absolutely, like 3-minute sex is not the vibe. And hopefully there are a few of you that are listening to this that are experiencing that. Although it is common, I do know that it's also quite common to experience good sex and just want a desire for more. And so around this conversation of couples wanting to improve their sex life, Kim Anami stated that at minimum, she prescribes a 3-hour weekly sex date with your partner. Every single week, 3 hours, naked in your bed, to connect with each other, play with each other, explore, and improve your sex life. And absolutely, doing that is going to have a massive impact on your connection with each other, the way you know each other's bodies, are able to both give and receive pleasure, and have a big impact on how much pleasure you're going to be able to feel. And 3 hours every single week is just not sustainable, nor is it even that achievable, I think, for most busy women with families, with full lives, to do on a regular weekly basis. Like maybe make a goal of it to be a once a month thing. Again, that would be amazing. Even doing it seasonally could be quite good, every like 3-ish months. But I have some really practical ways that will also have a big impact on your connection and your sex life without having that big 3-hour to-do list item, which can almost feel like adding even more to your schedule, can create some resistance around having to coordinate how you're going to make this happen all the time. So we're going to put all that on the shelf and have some easy, practical tools and shifts in your sensual embodiment that that will still have a big impact while working with your full life. And so just to quickly break down what we will be going over this episode, what you actually need to improve your sex life in a way that feels more sustainable, more seamless within your life is 1, strengthening your connection outside of the bedroom, super huge. A 1-hour weekly devotional pleasure ritual, way more doable than 3 hours. And incorporating the 3 keys of Tantra: breath, sound, and movement. So let's take a moment to really break down each one of these items, because each of them are going to have a big impact, again, in your connection with each other, which really fosters that spark in the bedroom, as well as really training your body to hold the pleasure, to feel and build and amplify the pleasure, so you can have amazing sacred sex in a way that fits into your life and fits into just being an everyday family, perhaps with a partner that doesn't necessarily want to explore the tantric side of things. You can still have sacred sex with them. So diving into number 1, strengthening your connection outside of the bedroom. I like to say that foreplay starts with coffee in the morning. Many people will think about foreplay as a bit of kissing and touching before penetration, but it is so much more than that. It really is about fostering that connection and building that anticipation throughout the day. In reality, foreplay starts the moment sex has ended. And then you continue to build that connection, build that anticipation before your next intimate experience. And so some different ways that you can really cultivate that connection is through both emotional connection as well as non-sexual physical connection. There's a few others, but those are the main 2 important ones that will have a big impact. And it can be easier to just focus on those 2, and you'll really notice a difference when you do that. So what does that look like? It can look like whoever is waking up first bringing coffee to the other in the morning. I absolutely love that my husband does this throughout the work week, and on the weekends I try to pay him back with that or reciprocate that so he can have a little bit more sleep, and I can do it at least one of the weekend days. And it really helps us just anchor in that connection first thing in the morning. Now, there's 2 other really important connection points in your day. And it is before and after your greatest separation. And so that tends to be during the workday, whether it's both of you or one of you going away for work. When you have that separation, how are you connecting beforehand? So say if someone's working early mornings, can be that coffee in the morning, a nice kiss, a nice snuggle, something like that. And then when you reconnect after the workday, what does that look like? Are you coming to actually meet each other? Perhaps lengthening those hugs or those kisses. Really connecting when it comes to what's going on in each of your days. Not necessarily going through the task or to-do list of the things you got done, but how did it feel moving through the day? How are you feeling in that moment? What do you need? What kind of support would be helpful? What desires do you have for later on in the day or for the next day? Really being able to connect on that deeper emotional level during that moment is going to really foster that connection. Then, of course, there's all of those other small little gestures that we can do throughout the day. These can be little text messages to each other, sharing those reels or memes, showing that you're thinking about each other, and of course, reciprocating those as well, so it doesn't feel like you're just talking into the void. It also includes all of those physical connection points. any hugs, moments of wrapping your arms around each other, asking for a hug because you know it would just feel really nice. Different flirty comments that you can give to each other throughout the day or the evening. All of these different things, words of appreciation, you can really weave in your love languages in this to build that connection outside the bedroom. And the more you do this, the more open you will feel when it comes to sexy time and being more physically intimate with each other. You will have that building of connection. You will feel that openness. So it will be easier for you to melt into the pleasure. It may end up taking a little bit less warm-up time of what's typically seen as foreplay before getting to penetration, while also knowing there is no rush. Take your time touching each other and really warming things up, awakening the whole body through touch before getting to those penetrative moments. And that will just have a massive impact on how much pleasure you're able to feel during that time. Okay, so that kind of summarizes strengthening your connection outside of the bedroom, and I went a little bit more into actual foreplay action. Number 2 is having a 1-hour weekly devotional pleasure ritual. So this is my practical alternative for a 3-hour tantric sex date night. So when you're thinking of a 3-hour tantric sex date night, logistically, you need to figure it out for 2 of you to have that 3-hour time slot together. If you have a family with kids, you need to figure that out. So someone else is with the kids, they're out of the house, all of those sorts of things. So just logistically speaking, it's quite a challenge. Where on the flip side, a 1-hour weekly devotional pleasure ritual is much more approachable. This is for just one partner. Each of you can do it on your own, but I find the women I work with are the ones who are really interested in exploring this side of things and exploring sacred sexuality and experiencing even more waves of pleasure compared to those short burst tend to be clitoral orgasms and wanting to be able to access the other realms of sacred sexuality. And so you can just have this 1 hour time with yourself. I like to call it a weekly date night with myself. It's what actually propelled me into the world of sacred sexuality. And what you do within that 1 hour time can look very different. What I tend to prescribe, and is what the Sensual Embodiment Collective is really geared for, is supporting you in these weekly date nights with yourself, is incorporating things like meditations, breath work, and pleasure practices. And the intention behind this 1 hour weekly pleasure ritual, weaving in these different practices, is 1, nervous system regulation. Nervous system regulation will have a massive impact on your sex life and how much pleasure you can hold and feel and lose yourself in. Because if your nervous system is in more of a fear response, if it's not feeling safe, if it is scared of judgment, if it feels fat, if it has had negative experiences around sexuality in the past, that lives within the nervous system and can place this on these current experiences, even though it's with a trusted and safe partner. So these practices really help regulate the nervous system so you can bring yourself into this safe rest and digest state, which allows you to open up, to feel the pleasure, and to surrender even more. Now, part of these practices also are rewiring subconscious beliefs. So this has an overlap with that nervous system regulation, but we have a lot of different subconscious beliefs based on how we are raised, what the culture was like around us, what we saw in TV and movies and magazines, all the different messages we received from the people, the adults and the peers in our life, the different early experiences we had with boyfriends and friends and name calling potentially, and all of these different things. They shaped our subconscious beliefs. And they can attach, again, feelings of fear and shame are really the huge ones that come up in my coaching practice time and time again. Is shame for being sexual. There can be a lot of religious shaming, as well as fear of being judged and fear of losing control. And you need to surrender and lose control to really get into those waves of orgasmic bliss. And so through your 1 hour weekly devotional pleasure ritual, especially when you're weaving in practices like what we have inside SEC, you're able to rewire your subconscious beliefs. And so again, that allows you to open up even more when you are getting sexual with your partner. And then there is a third piece that's really big with this weekly devotional pleasure ritual, is exploring your body. Being able to take your time to really connect with all of the different sensations, to awaken the parts of yourself that you have numbed out over time. Again, it tends to be a protection mechanism, but pretty much every woman's body is numb in one way or another. That's why so many women go towards clitoral orgasms, is because their vagina is numb from receiving penetration before they were actually warmed up and ready. Now, I do have a full podcast episode on why it takes women's bodies longer to orgasm and goes into specifics. So I will link that in the show notes for you if you want specifics on that. But through having this weekly devotional pleasure ritual with yourself, you get to explore yourself. You get to awaken these parts of yourself that were numb. It helps give you the knowledge that you can then communicate with your partner, and it really trains your presence, your mindfulness, which again is needed to get those orgasmic, ecstatic bliss states. Is you need to be present with the situation, with the sensations, not caught up in your head, in your thoughts. And that's something that takes training and takes practice. And that's much easier to do when you're doing it on your own with your weekly pleasure ritual. And this is all backed by science. I actually have a book beside me here, if you're seeing the video, Better Sex Through Mindfulness. Studies show how much having a particular style of mindfulness practice will impact not only your satisfaction of sex, but also your desire for sex. And yes, basic meditation will have an impact in basic body scans, but weaving in practices like what we share inside Sensual Embodiment Collective to really help train you on the specific sensual and sexual sensations and states of mind will have again, massive impact when you're having those partnered sexual experiences. So that's kind of the big why behind those 1 hour weekly devotional pleasure rituals. And it's so much more approachable than that 3 hour one. It's just you. Again, I have a whole podcast episode on this as well, in creating that weekly date night with yourself. Have it the same day each week, so it's predictable. So when you fall off the wagon, it's easier to get back on. And then the third practical tip I have for you as an alternative to these 3 hour tantric sex date nights is incorporating the 3 keys of Tantra, which are breath, sound, and movement. Again, I have a full podcast episode on this as well that I will try and link in the show notes for you. But each of these serves a different purpose, and all of them help expand your pleasure capacity. And so compared to bringing in toys or lingerie, which are novelty, they are a quick dopamine high, and they're fun, they're like a little drug hit, and then the high fades away, and they don't really do the same thing anymore. Well, the 3 keys of Tantra, using breath, sound, and movement, actually expand your pleasure capacity in a long-lasting way. The high doesn't wear off. You actually get to deepen with these tantric sex tools and experience more and more and more pleasure and connection over time. It also moves your floor. We all have this range of what our sexy time looks like. Instead of always landing back to square one, your floor, we have our ceiling and the floor, it moves up. So no matter what, we're still experiencing more pleasure than what we experienced before we started incorporating these tools. That's that lasting skills and pleasure capacity that don't just wear off. And so again, I'll put the link where I go into even more details for all of these things. But essentially, it is just using the breath, using sounding like sighs or moans, as well as your intuitive movement, moving your hips and your upper body in whatever way feels right. All of these are going to help channel your sexual energy and amplify them. There are more holistic sex tools that I help my coaching clients with, but these 3 are quite accessible and something that basically anyone can begin to work with. There's also different breathing patterns. How does breathing slowly affect your pleasure? What if you do more straw breathing? That can be really great for edging. What if you quicken the speed of your breath? What impact does that have on your sensations? So these are all things you can play around with in your weekly devotional pleasure ritual. They're woven into the guided audios inside SEC, and you can do it on your own. And then you feel more confident weaving these things into your partnered experience. So to wrap all of that up, we don't need a 3-hour tantric weekly date night. Yes, that could be amazing, just not practical. So instead, what I recommend you doing to improve your sex life, to begin to really weave in sacred sex in an approachable way that doesn't necessarily include all of these out there lengthy rituals, is 1, strengthening your connection outside the bedroom, really prioritizing that. 2, having a 1-hour weekly devotional pleasure ritual or a 1-hour weekly date night with yourself, weaving in things like meditation, breathwork, pleasure practices, and then weaving in our 3rd thing of the 3 keys of Tantra, breath, sound, and movement. Each one of these items is going to have a massive impact on your connection, on how much pleasure you feel, how you are able to focus on all of these different sensations, how you're able to build the sexual energy in your body and begin to access those altered states of consciousness. It is so beautiful, and it's a journey that really builds on itself. We're again raising that ceiling and that floor as you move through these different skills that you get to take on with the mindfulness, with the breath, the sound, the movement, all of these different things. So I am here if you have any questions at all about any of these. I offer a free consultation call. I will link in the show notes that I am happy to chat with you. And I also have an invitation to join SEC to support your weekly devotional pleasure rituals so you can experience more confidence, and better sex. Plus, for being a podcast listener, you can save 10% off with code PODCAST. Thank you for joining. If this episode was helpful, please leave a rating or review or consider sharing it with a friend. And sending you off with so much love, and I will be back next Tuesday.